And so I currently work at the Delaware County Intermediate Unit in the Early Intervention Department. I've been there for 12 years or so. I started there as a school psychologist. The early intervention evaluations are quite different from school age evaluations. We do something called arena evaluations there, which really we do standardized assessment, but we do it sort of in a play-based, naturalistic environment. And so I sort of fell in love with working early intervention, and I knew I would stay there. 7 years ago, I moved into administration. So now I'm the supervisor of the early intervention department. We have about 3,000 students, the majority of which we see out in their community preschool programs. I supervise special education teachers, school psychologists, teachers' assistants, in addition to the rest of our staff, and sort of oversee our whole diagnostic process, where we evaluate about 1,500 students per year. So we're a large machine. We don't really ever get a 60-day timeline where I am, but in my day-to-day, I spend time doing a role that would look similar to a principal's role, where I go from classroom to classroom, I greet staff, I greet parents, I greet students, and then I attend a lot of meetings for the special ed supervisor portion, which involve budgetary types of discussions that are the least fun part of the job, and also a lot of oversight of professional development and training, and the overall supervision and planning of student services.
And still had time to be here today. Let's see here. So I work in a little bit of an interesting space. While I use my school psychology skills literally every day, I am not practicing as a school psychologist right now. Right now, I am the director of doctoral programs in a college of health professions. So Thomas Jefferson University is now one of the largest healthcare academic institutes, at least in the tri-state area. I think with the acquisition of Lehigh Valley Health, we probably have 25 or 26 hospitals in our healthcare system. Sidney Kimmel Medical School is the largest medical college in the country, so it's a really large, robust, kind of complex system. But it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy working there, is because I think that interprofessional collaboration and discourse across settings is really, really important. So in my day-to-day, I am training doctoral students to be researchers, to be healthcare leaders, to be leaders in allied healthcare spaces, do a lot of mentoring around research, a lot of my own research. I'll give you an example of a project that we're working on right now that I think kind of captures some of this interdisciplinary collaboration. So I have do folks know what a physician assistant is? Right, so a physician assistant is somebody who usually engages in about 27 to 29 months of training and earns a Master's of Science and can support the work of an MD. They're often called advanced practice providers. Well, I don't know about you all, but pediatricians and pediatric offices sometimes have very interesting ideas about what school psychologists do and how special education works. I'm seeing some knowing looks in the audience. So one of the things that has been really important in this work is, for example, working with future physician assistants and teaching them about what school psychologists do and how schools work, so that when they are out in the field practicing and working with families, they actually know and can make better referrals, can partner with us in different ways. I have 4 students, for example, right now who are going to be PAs. We're working with a community-based organization in Chester County who provides kindergarten readiness skills to immigrant families, right? These are future PAs, right? They're not future school psychologists, they're not future teachers, but they are working on a research project right now to think about, what does immigrant family health look like? How does that include things like school readiness? How do things like school readiness impact parental stress? How does that relate to documentation status? Right? Really thinking like big picture systems thinking, interdisciplinary thinking, so that ultimately the goal being that when they go out into the field, they're better equipped to collaborate with all of you. And in turn, our community partners have a better sense of what is a PA. How do I build a partnership with a PA? The school district that we're working with, oh, this is what a PA does. How can I build relationships with the whole pediatric office or a whole pediatric system? So not doing school psych stuff daily, but for sure use those skills every day and feel like this is an important part of making others aware of what we do and why it's so important, not just in a traditional public school setting, but beyond that in our communities as well.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah, so currently I have a pretty neat job. I work at Lehigh, and I do maybe about 3 different types of things. Like, I spend a part of my time just kind of teaching traditional classes. So right now I'm teaching a class on the introduction to school psychology. So I have all of our first-year students, teaching them a bit about our field, what we do, how to make database decisions. And then, you know, I spend a good chunk of my time supervising our students in their applied placements, including both Eliza and Teresa. What we'll do is I meet with the different cohorts of students, and we will talk about everything that they're doing at PRAC, at their applied placements in schools. And I think that's actually a really kind of like interesting window for me into what's going on in all the different schools and with all the different school psychologists in our area. So we'll talk about all the interesting cases that come up, the conundrums, the ethical dilemmas and things like that. And it highlights how broad of a field we really have. You know, a lot of areas of psychology, medical practice, things like that, you can really specialize. School psychologists, we can't. We have to know a little bit about everything. Actually, we have to know a lot about a lot of things. And so I get to see and oversee our students in trying to learn that breadth of knowledge with a good bit of depth. And then I spend a part of my time trying to help increase our capacity to provide good training. So that involves reaching out to potential sites where we can place students, working with them, trying to write grants to get some funding to do that. I need to talk to you about something in a minute if you want. But you know, we spend a lot of time trying to help build the capacity to train students in a variety of settings, and also to kind of use the students to help push out best practices into those settings, and to take the research that is being developed in our program and in other programs, and to help push that into practice. So my days can be pretty varied. A lot of it is like sitting at my desk typing things and drinking coffee, and talking to talking to people. It's a pretty good job. I like it. And we probably have the most traditional school psychologists. So.
Absolutely. You know, I love hearing about the many amazing things we could do as a school psychologist, because we are not limited to one thing. Being the school psychologist here at the table that doesn't have a doctoral degree, there are so many things that I've been able to do, such as working in community mental health, working, using applied behavior analysis with students with autism. But y'all, let's talk about what it looks like in the schools. So I have been fortunate to work in a whole wide variety of settings over my career, from experiences in the school district of Philadelphia to working in a very rural district to now working in a large considered urban district. But we also have a whole wide variety of things from socioeconomic statuses to diversity to everything you could think of. So when I think about what my day is like, I think about going into an office, sitting down, writing my to-do list while leisurely drinking my cup of coffee, and that has literally never happened. The beautiful thing about being a school psychologist, and this is something that I really needed in my career, was everything is different. I have previously been in roles where I'm working in a school and I'm providing individual counseling, group counseling, social skills, conducting risk assessments, and de-escalating behavioral situations as my primary role and function. Currently, working in a larger district that is shorthanded by 4 psychologists, and that is when a full number doesn't meet an ask ratio. A large portion of my day is spent with evaluation requests. So what I've learned, though, is I really could shape my job to make it what I want to be and what my passions are. So over the years, I've had many wonderful intern and practicum students that really kind of help keep me up to date, and I love being able to support future practitioners. But having all of these students enables me to shape my role and function. So sometimes we have support, even though there may be 20 evaluations on the docket for a month. When we support, we could be running a group for girls with anger management problems in a high school setting that are at risk of being placed into an alternative school setting. We are able to develop and start working an adapted health curriculum for students with intellectual disabilities when they have never received any formalized health training in a school setting. I am able to have teachers come in, especially I could be at 3 to 4 schools in one day, and say, I have a student who is demonstrating this concern behaviorally or this concern academically, and we're going to sit down and we're going to problem solve. There are a lot of meetings. We have MTSS meetings to focus on students' academic progress. We have PBIS meetings, which focuses on students' behavioral progress. We look at the Student Assistance Program. We have multidisciplinary team meetings to review evaluation reports. We develop functional behaviors assessments. The list goes on and on. So there's usually not enough time in a day to finish everything we need to do, but it's always different. Some days I will be testing students all day long. All I know is every day I am never bored. I know I am helping students, and I get to shape my day for what I view is important. I've always said public education is the great equalizer. Students are able to get access to support and services they need regardless of their family's health insurance, regardless of their immigration status, regardless of any of these factors. So when I look at what my day needs to look like, it is how can I provide equitable and appropriate services to students. And even if I have 5 evaluations on my case for that day, sometimes that means maybe I test in the morning, but maybe in the afternoon these students really need an individual session, or the family really needs consultation to access community health services. So in short, every day is different, but every day is beautiful.
What are some skills that you have that you feel have made you a successful school psychologist?
Flexibility, passion, and time management. So some of my colleagues may not know me for some of my great, having the greatest executive functioning, but I think a lot of that in part is due to the nature of our job. So when I have time management, I know that I have to look and prioritize what needs to be done, what is most important to be done, and I need to be flexible, because even if I think what is most important at 9 a.m., by the time 1 p.m. comes around, something different is happening. I need to be passionate, because this is a difficult job. There are a lot of changes going through, but I can't lose that passion I have for students, because having that desire fuels me on even the most difficult days, and it lets me know I am doing my best work to help support kids. Of course, we need to do things like have interpersonal skills and be able to connect with a large variety of people. So I work really hard to meet people where they're at and really form relationships, whether it's family, staff, students. So the ability to build relationships with people, I think, is really pivotal in helping our students.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think to take that further, I think you need maybe 2 broad things, and one is to have some nice, warm interpersonal skills, and also some cold analytical skills, and know when to use which ones. I think, as a school psychologist, you work with a lot of children and parents and teachers, and a lot of them are not doing what you think that they should be doing at that time. And I think you need to be able to try to see their behavior from their perspective and understand the parameters under which it makes sense. And when you can do that, you can approach them with compassion and understanding and help to get to a solution to whatever problem you're facing that's going to work for everybody. And I think at times you need to be able to, we do a lot of data-based decision making in our field, and being able to look at data and understand what it's telling you. And I think if you're the type of person who likes being wrong and likes to prove likes to look to prove yourself wrong, and sees that as like, oh my God, I made a prediction and it wasn't correct. What does that tell me about this student, or what does that tell me about the way I think about students? You're going to love this field, because we have a lot of data, a lot of problems to solve. If you're the type of person who thinks that I made a prediction that was wrong, well, let me argue more and more for why I was right all along. This isn't the field. But it's really an amazing field where you do get to spend a lot of time trying to learn about how we learn and how we act, and it's those are the most interesting questions. So
What they said, and I won't just pass it on, but I think maybe 3, if I had to put them in 3 buckets: cognitive flexibility, creativity, both and communication skills. The cognitive flexibility, my goodness, if you are somebody who is rigid, alluding to what you just noted, and wants something to be this way and only this way, this won't work. You have to be able to think on your feet, and you have a to-do list that morning, and guess what? A need arises, and you got to change your plan. So I think being able to be really flexible in your thinking, and being able to shift and look at things from alternative perspectives and consider another avenue or another way is really, really important. If you get stuck and you're rigid, you will get really, really stuck, and you won't be able to move forward into your work or really serve the constituents, the community, the schools, the students that you need to serve. The creativity piece, I think, goes along with that, but thinking outside of the box and knowing when to abandon plan A, maybe B and C, and coming up with an entirely new plan that draws on resources that you didn't know you had, or finds a new partner that you didn't know was interested, and really being able to think creatively about challenges, about how to support people is really important. And then, like you said, you gotta be a good communicator. All the data in the world is useless if you can't communicate about it, period. End of story. No one knows what it means, it doesn't matter, right? If it gets stuck in your report or in a chart and you can't communicate about it either in writing or orally, it has no impact. And similarly, if we wanna advocate for our students, make sure their needs are met, make sure that this field can grow and thrive, we have to be good communicators, because a lot of what we have to do is PR. Quite frankly, people don't always know what we do, or they think we do one very narrow thing. And it's part of our job is to communicate and amplify all the diverse skills that we have and the ways that we can support communities. I think those are some of the key things that make a successful school psychologist and have served me well in my career. Even though I'm not doing this day to day, they translate really well across various spaces.
Yes, so everything you have said. It really is lovely to spend this morning with like-minded people who see things the way that I do. But yes, all of those things, I think, the question is about being a successful school psychologist. I think that the assessment skills, the analytical skills, the interpretation skills, they're to be a school psychologist. But to be a successful school psychologist, you really need the other piece. And I think that really starts with empathy and understanding the perspectives of all stakeholders. So if you go into a situation, you perform the assessments or the research or whatever you're performing, you might know the answer very quickly. But just as the other panelists have said, that answer only exists in your mind, and it doesn't really affect any change until you understand all of the perspectives involved in helping that student. And so the ability to have that excellent oral communication and written communication, but also to find out where parent and child are in this process right now. Where are they in their understanding of what information you're about to deliver, and where's the rest of the team in terms of different education that might need to be done in order for them to understand your recommendations. What is the work of the team that needs to be done? So that flexibility piece is crucial. And then I think it's impossible to be a school psychologist without being a lifelong learner, because our field is constantly changing. And so if you asked this question a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there would have been very different things at play. The only thing that is clear to us is that we are always learning and growing and changing. And I guess then also just the piece of the different populations that we all work with. So when you look at our certifications as K through 12, it's really more than that. At working in an early intervention environment, also looking at adult learners, also working with the parents of our students who sometimes have their own learning needs, and trying to accommodate our parents' learning needs in order to provide the feedback and consultation that's needed. So I think all of the things that these panelists have said, and then some, allow us to be successful school psychologists. Well, I mean, from my role, it's staffing. Staffing is a big issue. We have more students than we can serve often in our field anyway of early intervention. The students are coming in with greater and greater and more complex needs, qualitatively different than we've seen in the past. Families are struggling. And so, our role is to provide a particular service, but often the family that we meet isn't ready to accept that service. And perhaps they're really working on survival at this time. And so meeting our families where they are, honoring where they are in their experience, realizing that there are ways to help without overwhelming a parent with educational recommendations when they're still at the point of survival. And I find that with each year, we go a little bit more and more into that world. And just in terms of having to provide professional development to our staff, I think that's where I notice the most how much more trauma-informed our staff needs to be on a daily basis. So I think the combination of our increasing need for resources and staffing, but also our how absolutely imperative it is to look at everyone, whether it's our staff, our parents, or our students with that trauma-informed lens, it increases every year.
I know this is breaking the rules, but I'm gonna just go back to the question about the skills. You made me think of this. Humility, right? If we are not willing to be wrong, like you had said in your example, and willing to say like, oh, well, I thought that was gonna go that way, and it sure didn't, and also I have a lot more to learn about X, Y, and Z. That humility piece, something exciting's happening behind this, is really, really important, and something that I think we need to embrace if we're gonna be really good school psychologists. The biggest challenges, I want to take a strength-based approach and note first what I think are some of our strengths. I think we, as a field, are really good at organizing, right? I think from our national organization down to the state levels, we've done a good job at being clear about who we are and what we do and bringing people into this field. And I think two of our biggest challenges are an identity crisis. I think we have an identity crisis in this field. I think we are viewed as people who do just one thing, and that is assessment. And that's to our detriment, right? We are, in some cases, the only person in a district who can do certain things, but that means then a lot of folks are doing only that thing. They're not then using all of the other skills that we've just talked about that are so important, and they're seen as the person you go to when you need this one thing. And then that relates to the second really big challenge that I see in our field, which is burnout, stress, and trauma. People are leaving this field because they are going in and they are getting inundated and overwhelmed with very large testing caseloads, and they feel like they don't have what they need to be successful, and then they leave, right? And that's not obviously where we want to be. So I think our systems are traumatized and stressed, and I think our practitioners are as well. I think that those are the two places that we have work to do. Being clear about what we can do, what our identity is, how we can be useful to districts and communities, and then also using that knowledge to support school sites so that they can thrive and have long and fruitful careers and want to stay in this field and continue to contribute to the communities that we serve.
Well, this time I might actually be short because that was my answer too.
Okay.
No, but I think that's it from my perspective as well, is that we spend a lot of time doing assessment practices that are mandated to us by federal, state, or law or district policy that we know are not actually effective in helping students. Some of the practices are, but many of them we know aren't. And actually, I really appreciate being in a field that's critical to some of those practices. And because of the shortages that you mentioned, that both of you mentioned, we don't have time to get to all those other wonderful practices we have that are sitting on the shelf. So that's why we're all excited about trying to recruit more people to this field, is we need more folks who do what we do so that we can start to do all that we can do.
Slow down the speech.
All right, y'all. I'm going to talk to you about some of the problems. But I'm going to start off with our strength. I love using, with our students, I always try to look at strength-based assessments, but we are fighters in school psychology. We are fighting every day for our students, for our family, for our profession. Running a group with students, with young women who were involved in the juvenile justice system, who had gang affiliations, who were frequently involved in in physical altercations, I came in and I told them I'm a fighter too. And they looked at me, and I'm like, you could be a fighter without getting in a physical altercation. And that was the whole focus of our group, how we all have something we need to fight for. The need for school psychologists is great. The amount of staffing is not there. We have increased mental health concerns in our students. Our evaluation caseloads are growing. I want to say 2 years ago, I evaluated students in 20 buildings in one school district. This year, I'm only at 7 buildings I've completed evaluations in. When I do all these evaluations, which are very important, all the other things I do, the preventative work, the direct service work, is harder and harder to get completed. Now, as I've said, I've been fortunate. I frequently have interns or practicum students who enable me to have a larger role and function by virtue of training them and doing things together. But it is not enough. We are still triaging. We are still looking at every day and saying, what is the most pressing need? What do we need to address? But there are always things on the list that are unable to get accomplished. My biggest hope is there are so many good people in school psychology and education and mental health. People are passionate. Some of the best human beings I know are in this profession, are at this conference, are in this room, and are potentially watching this presentation. We cannot give up on something that is so important for our students because the burnout is real. It is difficult and it is tiring, and it has not been getting any easier. But instead of throwing this all out the window and being like, y'all, I'm gonna open that pit bull and chihuahua rescue that I really wanted to do, I'm gonna still save that for retirement. We need more like-minded, dedicated people to help bridge the gap with the number of practitioners there are and the current needs. Until then, we're going to keep fighting, whether it's with school boards, administrations, policies, whatever it may be, but I'm looking forward to projects like this that continue to bring awareness and kind of bring more warriors to our fight.
I have one thing before we wrap. So the positive of all this is if you join our field, you will definitely have a job. But your district has 4 openings right now. I have districts that reach out to me at Lehigh saying, can we hire your graduate students now even though they're 3 years away from being certified? So if you're worried about having a job after graduation, you won't need to if you become a school psychologist.
True.
We'll gladly take it.
So we are fortunate here in Pennsylvania. We have so many amazing local programs. But we're going to talk about Temple University here. So when I realized I wanted to be a school psychologist, I looked at programs, and something that was very important to me was a lens on working with students with cultural and linguistic diversity. So I knew that was something that was greatly important to me, and when I looked at programs, Temple University at that time, many, many moons ago, they still currently have this same focus. We worked in a large urban setting in Philadelphia. We had many types of trainings on how to appropriately assess and intervene with students from various backgrounds, various countries, and various disabilities. So know that school psychology, these programs have some of the same heart and foundation, but look at what your passions are. And it's okay if you don't know right away, but we all know some things we are drawn to. So look at the programs because they each have specific areas of focus. I also knew that at this time I wanted to get my educational specialist degree and not pursue a doctoral program at that time because it fit my lifestyle and I wanted to work in the schools. So you have to make sure you know, do we want to do something more clinical? Do we want to do something more teaching, different types of school psychology? Or do we want to do more of a practitioner-focused model? So when I figured out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, I leaned on my undergraduate professors and advisors. I said, hey, I don't really know what to do here. This is something new for my family. Let's talk about the grad school process. Let's talk about what I need to prepare. And I leaned heavily on my professors at that time to help prepare me for everything that needs to be done, because it can seem overwhelming from sometimes taking assessments to writing, letters, interview processes. So I think knowing the people you could talk to, knowing what you want to focus on are two huge things that will help. My biggest advice that I wish I understood better was the financial aid process for graduate school and funding, whether through assistantships and things of that nature. I highly recommend when you are looking to go into this profession, talk to your experts in financial aid. There is a lot of support out there, but especially if you come from a family or an area where maybe a lot of people don't go to undergrad, let alone graduate school, find those experts to help guide you. So that could limit a lot of difficulties afterwards in terms of funding or paying back loans, because the support is there. So make sure you ask people.
We spoke a few moments ago about how none of us knew what school psychology was, or even that it existed until we were in our 20s. And so it's also difficult then, as somebody who's considering applying to a school psychology program, to know what are some of the differences to look for among programs in the field. Like you probably don't know whether you want to use a RT, a response to intervention, or a patterns of strengths and weaknesses approach to identifying learning disabilities yet. But the program, the faculty of the program you go to probably will have a strong opinion on that. And their opinions on some of these things will shape the way that you think in practice for the next 30 or 40 years. So what I would advise you to do is to, and what I did is to try to get to know the faculty of the program before you make your decision. And what I did is I decided, a program I'm going to apply to, I'm going to try to read at least one paper by every faculty member. And that takes a little bit of time. You can just read the abstracts. But actually, it's a good idea to read the whole papers. And no, it is, because you get an idea of how they think and how they write and what's important and what research methods they use. And if you're going to be a doctoral student in particular, what type of work you're going to be expected to produce. And in doing that, you really get to know them academically and what they're going to be teaching you and training you in. When you go on interviews, it's good to try to get to know them a little bit more personally and try to talk to the students in the program and see if they're happy. I ended up picking Lehigh because I think all of those things clicked for me. One, it was fairly close to home, and that was important to me. But the faculty were active researchers in areas that seemed interesting and important to me. The students were, by and large happy. Always could use a little more funding, but they enjoyed what they were doing, and and I remember years ago another program that I had applied at. They talked about in the doctoral program how they were going to get you out of there in like 5 years and be sure that you were done on time, and that struck me the wrong way. In retrospect, maybe it would have been a good idea, but I don't want to go somewhere where they're telling me the best thing they have is they're going to get you out fast. I want somewhere where they're engaged and where they're really thinking about the work that they do, and someplace that you never want to leave. I saw that passion at the program, at Lehigh, the program I went to. So I would encourage you just to think of to get to know the program academically, see if it's a place that you would fit, and then if it feels like a place that you want to spend 2 to, in my case, 11 years of your life, you'll know.
I think in terms of approaching the graduate application process, I think learning about what school psychology is first. Obviously, those in the room know what it is, you're here, but for folks that are watching and thinking about grad school, figuring out and doing some homework on, wait, what does a school psychologist do? How is that different from a social worker? How is that different from a professional counselor? Because when you do apply, as somebody who reads a lot of applications, we're looking for goodness of fit, right? And if I'm interviewing someone and ask them, like, why a career in school psychology, and they can't articulate why this field and not a teacher or a social worker, that would, to me, tell me that that person's not quite ready, right? So if you do decide this is a path for you, doing your homework around what that specifically means and why that selection is being made is really, really important. I would say for me that also is why I chose the program I did. I, not surprisingly, used data-driven decision-making to drive my selection, and I had my Excel sheet and had good mentors at Lehigh at the undergrad level who were helping me. But really finding the faculty and the people who you're going to be learning from, does that feel like a good fit, right? Going back to that idea of good fit, there are lots of places to get your training. I would encourage folks to consider training programs that are credentialed by NASP and or APA as relevant. I think that sets a minimum sort of standard in terms of quality and rigor. But then on top of that, like, yeah, what kinds of things are the faculty researching? What kind of book chapters are they writing? It tells you a little bit about how they approach the work. It will shape your perspective on the future of your career. So I think getting to know the program and doing that before you apply, and before certainly you would be invited on an interview, is a really good strategy. While I grew up in Pennsylvania, I actually, and there are many great options in Pennsylvania, of course, for your training, obviously represented here. I wanted something different, right? I wanted to go to a city and wanted to be exposed to diversity in some different ways, so ended up at Columbia on 125th, and that was important in my professional development. But I think also thinking about the area, the location, that will influence some of the culture in the program, but also influence the trajectory of your career. So a number of different things to think about, but really I would say being an informed consumer and seeker of graduate training is really, really important. Doing your homework ahead of time, and it's okay to email random people on a panel and say, like, hey, I heard your talk, I'm still confused about what a school psychologist is, can we chat, right? Like, doing that outreach and sending folks emails is a great way to learn, and I don't think I've ever had somebody come back and say, they shut me down and said, no, I don't want to talk to you, right? Most of us are really interested in talking to folks and helping them sort of explore graduate career pathways.
Well, my advice would be to follow the advice of this panel. I came at this from a very different perspective. I was young, and I was what I would still describe myself as a worker bee. I wanted to keep moving. I started working really young in the field, and I never wanted to slow down long enough to do much of anything. So I wanted the program to be close so I could commute and not have to change jobs. I didn't have to think about too much, so I chose a school that was across the street from my undergraduate institution and 15 minutes from my home. It did the trick. I was able to get the education that I needed. I would say that the most important lessons that I learned throughout all of this would have been on-the-job learning. The types of things that I learned by putting myself in the room with amazing psychologists that I was able to either formally or informally choose as my mentors. And so, although the program ended up being an exceptional program, I can't say that I did a ton of work to find that program. It was really out of convenience and whatever allowed me to stay in my field the longest, and without having to take a big interruption in my career path. And so I think the lesson that I learned from that is sort of, you must do what works for you, right? Do what works for yourself. I still tend to always do whatever education I need for the job that I want, and usually the job I'm already kind of doing. And so I think that there's definitely room for all. I've done a lot of research across my career, but most of it is right on the job in order to do whatever I need to do for our students and staff. And so I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer, but I think that one of the panelists earlier talked about the financial aid piece. That's something that I wish I knew sooner. The assistantship programs are phenomenal, and you may be surprised at how readily available they are. So that's a piece that for sure I wish I knew a little bit more about at the time. And then I think the other piece that's good to be very aware of from day one, I think we were speaking before this started about internship opportunities. The internship is significant for a school psychologist, and it's needed and it's valuable. But it is something to consider as you're embarking on your education in school psychology, to have a plan for your internship, because it's an extensive period of time, and it's something that you must plan for.